This podcast is a member of WGPRN, WildGamesProductions.com.
Folks, and welcome to Darker Days Podcast. I am your host, Vince, along with my host, co-host, and host that needs no introduction, Mark. Mark, how's it going tonight?
I'm doing great, Vince. Enjoying this hot August weather. Welcome to episode 7, everybody.
That's right. This is episode 7 and recorded on, well, we're not going to tell you because it doesn't really matter. Anyway, so we're going to have a really fun and chock full of chunky goodness show tonight for everybody out there. We have a lot of things to go over. Hope everybody enjoyed our last podcast with our special guest host. Who was our special guest host again, Mark?
Matt McFarland,
Yep.
developer, freelancer, and designer extraordinaire. That was a great show, great interview. So if you're listening in, thanks, Matt. Really enjoyed it. Good stuff, Bo.
Okay, well, let's get on to the mailbag. I'm sure we have quite a bit of emails this week. Mark?
Well, there's one in particular I wanted to call out. Dominic wrote in with some kind words of support for the show. He likes our regular format, the fact we have a regular recurring set of features, which helps listeners know what you're going to get from the show, and also likes the way we stay on topic. We get that a lot, so thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Yes, I always like to harp on staying on topic, and I like to kick Mark and say, topic, and he always goes, okay.
Yes, Prince.
Yep.
Dominic also had an interesting question, which I'm going to pitch out to our listeners in general. He's running World of Darkness, where the characters currently all mortals, but when their templates come around, when they get transformed into supernatural entities, his players have all expressed an interest on playing as different entities. So one wants to be a werewolf, another a hunter, another a vampire. And he's a bit stuck for inspiration and would like some suggestions on integrating these different types of supernatural beings into a cohesive party, cabal, coterie, motley, whatever you want to call it. Now, we'll get to that in a future show on our Storyteller Advice section. We'll cover that kind of thing ourselves. But in the meantime, if any of our listeners would like to chime in with their thoughts or suggestions on this, go ahead and post away at our forums and let us know how you've handled this in your games. And you can find those forums via the link at darkerdays.tk. Our little forum link is down on the right-hand side. So click away and share your thoughts.
Yes, we loved your thoughts. Yes, thoughts.
Also wanted to give a shout out to Smooth Clubs.
I'm not sure what that one is. No.
I have no idea how to pronounce that, I have to admit, but it's an interesting name all the same. Alakov, Vim40, Bufupt, and Smiling Jack, who are our newest members at the forums. Welcome aboard, guys. Good to have you along for the ride.
Yep. Just come on to those forums and keep signing up and posting away. Like I said in the last episode, we do have someone working on a project, a fan project, to hopefully get it off the ground. Maybe when they get further into the show, they'll hand it into White Wolf, and you never know what happens. I mean, may want to get in on that groundwork project. Go talk to Warlock 2000 on the forums. He's heading up that project.
Yeah, it looks really cool. Very cool indeed. And if you want to drop us a line direct, you can reach us by email at darkerdaysradio@gmail.com.
That's correct. You can ask any questions, and Mark will be happy to answer them at any time of night or day, because he has nothing else to do right now.
That's quite right.
Just
sitting back in the hot August sunshine. That's all I'm doing.
Just a clarification on that. That was Warlock 2000 was working on Angel the Exile, he's calling it.
Oh, he's got a subname for it now. Cool.
I believe so, yes. Okay. Is that all we have in the mailbag this week?
That'll wrap up the mail call for this week. Yes, indeed.
All right, let's look into some White Wolf news today. It looks like they have The City in the Sand, a new live-action adventure available for Drive-Thru RPG. I think this is the first ones that White Wolf has put out in, 14 years?
14 years, yeah, their first live-action role-playing adventure. City in the Sand looks really interesting. It's for Vampire the Requiem, of course using the Mind's Eye Theatre rules. and it's based around the discovery of Cecil B. DeMille's set for the Ten Commandments, that old epic movie from way back in the day. So that sounds really interesting.
Right, and also White Wolf has been nominated for a bunch of Emmy awards. If you don't know,
7 categories in total. Yeah.
Right. That's NWoD.org. If you've never heard of it, I go check it out. They have a lot of good information there about all role-playing games. Actually started out a long time ago, just starting talking about Dungeons & Dragons 3rd Edition, and it merged with a bunch of other sites, and now it's really big, and they're actually at Gen Con this year, which they'll be presenting the award.
Yeah, NWoD or ENWoD, I can never figure out which one it is. It's a great forum, really friendly place, run by a great bunch of guys. I hang out there a fair bit when I'm in the mood for some D20 conversation, and you can do worse than stop by and say hi. Emmys, White Wolf nominated in 7 categories, including Best Writing, Best Rules, Best Adventure, and Product of the Year. So you'll find a link at ENWoD, or you can head on over to whitewolf.com and follow the link from there and cast your votes. And the results come out at Gen Con.
That's correct. Sadly, there is no Darker Days under the podcast section, Mark.
No, we're the new kids on the block, Vince. We have to pay our dues. It's a long, hard road to the top if you want to rock and roll.
But I think maybe by this time next year, all our listeners will petition to get us in there and vote us in as #1 podcast. Hopeful thinking, right?
It would be nice.
I believe that wraps up the White Wolf news, and then let's move on to everybody's favorite segment.
The Secret Frequency. Okay, The Secret Frequency this week tunes in to find out about John Reznikoff, hair collector. Yeah. John Reznikoff, he's an esteemed collector of various objects of interest. He has a multi-million-dollar stamp trading business. He owns a copy of the Declaration of Independence. He owns Ernest Hemingway's briefcase typewriter, amongst other things. But of interest to us is his collection of hair, specifically the hair of celebrities. Now, we're not talking about Britney Spears or just Michael Jackson here, although he does have some of Michael Jackson's hair. We're really talking about folks like George Washington, John F. Kennedy, Napoleon, Beethoven, Chopin.
And Mark?
I'm not dead yet.
Oh, sorry.
I'm getting better. He even has a strand of hair from Abraham Lincoln, taken from the 16th president on his deathbed, or his dying moments, which set Mr. Reznikoff back a cool $500,000.
Wow.
And apparently, if you look closely at the piece of hair, you can see little bits and pieces of debris, like egg bits from a frying pan, which John claims are pieces of brain matter. Now, freakish as hair collection sounds, hair collecting used to be all the rage back in Victorian times. It was considered as something of a gentleman's hobby. Rather than ask for someone's autograph back in the day, the discerning gentleman would ask for a lock of a celebrity's hair. And more than just an autograph, it was seen as a sign of affection for the person concerned. Now, as hair collecting has endured to the modern day, it brings with it the air of august creepiness that surrounds any celebrity-chasing pastime, not to mention its own peculiar set of boundary-issue controversies. And Mr. Reznikoff is not the only one. There are thousands of small-time collectors who do this, looking to snag snippets of Marilyn Monroe's curls, which are pretty rare, Katharine Hepburn's tresses, which are rarer still, and the locks of the fabled king of them all, Elvis Presley, which are some of the rarest around. As an example, one collector paid $119,500 for a tuft of hair from Che Guevara. Babe Ruth's hair sold for $38,000, and John Lennon's fetched $48,000.
Wow.
Beyond of interest to collectors, investigators can use DNA taken from strands of hair to investigate the lives of celebrities, past and present. So, if you want to know whether Lincoln had syphilis, or if Beethoven was addicted to coke and hookers, you can do tests on the guy's hair and find out. Anyway, returning to Reznikov, some other prizes in his collection, well, they include Elvis's hair, taken after getting... Oh, thank you very much. After getting his famous GI haircut, some from King Charles I, before he lost his head, alongside a few strands of hair taken from his tomb after he was beheaded. John Wilkes Booth, John Dillinger, Ava Brown, Edgar Allan Poe, Albert Einstein. Anyway, you get the picture. Celebrity tresses gathered from across the centuries. So for games, then, how do we use this? Well, an obvious answer is if you just want to creep the hell out of your players, make an NPC a hair collector. There was a very famous X-File episode based around this, with a serial killer who went around collecting people's hair. I think Scully got cropped at one point. Maybe the guy wants the hair of one of the characters for purely innocent purposes. You know, he's trying to collect the hair of all manner of folks. If you have a character who, I don't know, who's a journalist or who works in a particular engineering firm, maybe he just wants to get all the hair of local engineers or get a lock of hair from every local journalist. A little bit strange, but nothing necessarily sinister. But then if that hair were to get into the wrong hands, there are more sinister motivations that you can apply here. Hair is a well-known focus for occult practices, so a character whose hair has been taken, they might find themselves the target of all kinds of voodoo-related problems. Hair might be used to determine whether a celebrity was a supernatural being of any kind, or had contact with supernatural beings. And if you play in the old world of darkness, a running joke is that every celebrity in history was a member of some vampire clan or werewolf tribe or mage tradition at some point. So you could have a bit of a riff on that if you were so inclined. Now these were all pretty run-of-the-mill concepts, though, so let's dial up the strangeness a little bit. What about cloning? If you could extract DNA from hair or from the hair root, what might you do with it? Would you want to clone people like Ava Brown or John Wilkes Booth or even John Dillinger? Could you use someone's hair to contact their ghost? If you're a powerful enough sorcerer, could you use it to raise the dead? And speaking of sorcerers, in Mage, the astral realms are home to global concepts that are shared by all the people in the world. So the concept of government, the ideal of democracy, the color blue, these all exist as spiritual concepts within the astral. And one of the features, which is actually really nicely described in the Mage book Astral Realms, one of the features of the astral is you can go there and interfere with these concepts. You can manipulate them. So what if you could use someone's hair as a focus for casting a spell that would alter the way that people think about them? You know, manipulating their beliefs about that person on a global scale. What if you could change the way that everybody in the world felt and thought about JFK? Make the entire world forget he ever existed. That impact upon world politics. Or make people think that Albert Einstein was a raving lunatic. What effect would that have on modern physics? What if you could extract hair fibers from the Shroud of Turin? What do you do with those? So next time you're at the hairdresser's, take a look around at all the hair that's lying about the place and ask yourself, what would John Reznikov do? So, we bring the secret frequency to a close there for the week. Hair today, gone tomorrow. Sorry.
End it with a joke, huh?
I've been writing that all week. Come on.
Yeah. All right, Mark.
Now, for future secret frequency segments, I thought it would be interesting, and this is actually based on an email from one of our listeners, to open up the frequency and invite our listeners to send in their local folklore. One of our listeners sent a really interesting mail just detailing snippets of local legends that surround his hometown out in Ireland. And reading through those, I thought, these would make a fantastic bit of subject matter for the show. So, for everybody out there, if you have any local spooky stories doing the rounds in your neighborhood, local legends that have been told and retold in your part of the world down throughout the centuries, send them in. Or send me a link to where I can find them online, and we'll do a little show dedicated to your particular neck of the spooky woods.
Or actually, we'll post up something in the forums, too, so everybody can share their stories with other people.
Even better idea. Yeah, good stuff.
Okay. That in the secret frequency this week?
It does indeed. We're keeping it a little shorter than normal this week because we have so much hefty stuff to get through in the show. And that will do us for the time being, I think, Vince.
All right, that'll do us, and we'll see you next week, folks. No, I'm just kidding. I just had to play off on your joke there, Mark. All right, we're going to go into the Old World of Darkness feature. So we had some listeners ask us about Demon the Fallen. Mark, have you ever played Demon the Fallen?
I haven't played it. I've used demons as antagonists in a number of games. Most recently in a modern mage game where I was riffing off the Polanski movie Ninth Gate. There's
Nice.
a demonic character in there who's actually very, very compelling, so I used that. But as a full-on game, no, although it's one that I've very much wanted to run.
Yeah, it's
You've got more experience with it, haven't you?
Yeah, I have a little experience. We did in a group I played with a couple years ago when Demon first came out. My group was really into it. That says a lot about my group, but it's really a fun game. It's very twisted. Basically, the players assume the role of a fallen angel, someone that defied the Creator, and was sent to the abyss. And over the millennium, they have been twisted and tormented and, tortured as much as they could. Now, each character is basically going to take upon the role of one of the fallen that's escaped from hell, or escaped from the abyss, I should say. And
so they're out of the abyss now.
Right, due to the Supernatural's war, pretty much, as they call it. I think it's called the Maelstrom.
Okay, right.
In the World of Darkness, sometimes it's referred to as the Greater War in Hell. There's a couple different names for it, but the characters would pick a house and a faction. There are 7 different houses. They're very similar to Vampire the Masquerade in their groupings, how they have different clans. There's the 7 houses. I'll just go over them real quick, and then I'll go in a little more detail. The Defilers, the Devils, the Devourers, the Fiends, the Malefactors, the Scourges, and the Slayers. Now, the Defilers, I may be pronouncing this wrong, so excuse me, the Lamasu, are originally the Angels of the Deep. They're the 5th house, giving them power over water, emotions, and their own forms. What do you think about that, Mark?
Right, so these are shape changes in a certain way.
Right, with the ability to use water how they want to pretty much throw water around, create it, things like that. And the Devils, the Namaru, or the Nahmaru, depending how you want to pronounce it. This is the first house that was created by God, pretty much. They have an affinity for radiance, enabling them to command mortal and the fallen alike, granting them powers over fire. I had a lot of fun with this house.
Cool. So, I mean, does Lucifer feature in it? Lucifer sounds like he's made for the Namaru house.
I would categorize him in here. Some people probably don't, but I would. Now, the Devourers are the Rabisu, whomever. Angels of the Wind, warriors without equal. This is the 6th house that command the animals and the plants, as well as shaping the flesh of other beings as they desire. Check that out. And the Fiends, the Nibiru, Angels of the Spheres, Master of the Portals to travel great distances. This is the 4th house. How does that sound?
Well, I mean, it's interesting to see in these correlations with the various other supernatural types in the World of Darkness. One of the things I remember from when Demon came out was there was a lot of talk made about how this house was responsible for the werewolves and this house was secretly responsible for giving avatars to mages and stuff. So it's kind of cool to see those cropping up here in the main houses themselves.
That's definitely true. I didn't even think about that, Mark. Good point.
Well, thank you very much, Vince.
The Malefactors, or the Anunnaki, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, is the 3rd house. The Shapers of Creation, the power to shape the earth and make astonishing artifacts by empowering them. That would be an interesting house. I never did get into that house, but it is an interesting house to read through and see how their powers work.
Well, that's got a really interesting correlation with the Mage game, because in Mage there's an order of beings called the Anunnaku, who are a sort of creator gods who are responsible for shepherding avatars into mages' bodies. And so using Anunnaki, Anunnaku, it's interesting to see the correlations there. I think they're originally based on categories of gods from Sumerian myths, which is quite cool because, the first impression that you get from Demon is that it's taking a very Judeo-Christian line on things. But then you just look at the names of the houses here, Lamasu, Namaru, Anunnaki. They're obviously going back to Mesopotamia there for some of their inspiration, which is a nice touch.
Yeah, they did a lot of research when they did this book. I know some people don't like Demon. Well, the best thing I could say is just it's a game, and if you don't like it, don't play it.
Totally, yes.
Anyway, back on topic. The Scourges, the Arashu, or Arashu, how you want to pronounce it?
Asharu?
Asharu, yeah. It all depends on how you look at it. They were the ones who guided the winds of creation, who granted the breath of life to all living things, who defined the spiritual connection between living beings. Does that sound familiar to you?
Well, yeah, this looks to me like those who are involved in the creation of mortals, giving the breath of life to living things. There's an interesting heretical Christian text that talks about fallen angels being involved in the creation of Adam and Eve and then fighting each other over Adam and Eve's right to be in the garden.
Right.
So I guess you'd use the Asharu to model those if you wanted to bring that kind of mythological inspiration into your game.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And then we have the last one is the Slayers, or the Haloku. The Slayers have dominion over the endings in death. They destroy the things of the physical world, commanding the spirits of the dead, and even entering the underworld.
Well, that's the only one that I know anything about, because there's a big fan of Wraith. There's a lot of interest shown in the fact that some of the so-called primordial wraiths were possibly actually slayers, actually slayer demons who found themselves wandering about in the underworld and decided to set up shop there. So yeah, that's quite cool to see them in their original context here.
Right. And then we move on to the factions. There's 5 factions that you can choose from, kind of like organizations or things like that. Faustians, Cryptics, Luciferians, Raveners, and Reconcilers. The Faustians, their goal is to basically take the humanity out of people, turn them against God, make pacts with people. That's their whole job. They feed off that stuff. Now, the Cryptics, they search for knowledge, and that's what they're looking for. They're just looking for knowledge. They just want to figure things out in life. They really don't want to harm anybody, but if they have to, that's their whole goal. Now, the Luciferians, that's probably self-explanatory, but I think we can figure that one out. Pretty much that's Lucifer's army. Those are the people that would give their souls, lay down their lives for Lucifer. When there's a second war that's supposedly coming, they're there for Lucifer, ready to jump in and fight for him. What do you think about that, Mark?
Well, what I thought was interesting about the Luciferians is the idea that one of their goals is to find Lucifer, right. And I was struck by what little I'd read about Demon, that Lucifer as Satan is kind of absent from the picture. So you take the most classic demon of all, the king of the devils, and remove him from the show. So straight away that gives more relevance to the lesser ranked demons, and that's a trickle down effect to the characters, which I thought was quite a good move for the game.
And the Raveners, their whole idea is just destruction. Destroy everything, leave nothing. I don't care. That's what we're here for. No one deserves to live. That's their job.
That sounds like a lot of my D&D characters. That's quite cool.
Yeah, kill, take the money, kill. The Reconcilers, pretty much looking for redemption. They're walking around going, "Oh man, I can't believe I did this. I wish the Creator would, or God would forgive me." That's their whole purpose. And that wraps up the factions in house. Mark, you have any comments about these?
Well, what struck me the most about this is, previously with a lot of the old World of Darkness games, you've got your vampire clan, your werewolf tribe, your mage tradition, the kith for the changelings, etc. Now, in New World of Darkness, you'll have that'll be broken up into 2 groups. So you might have your vampire's clan, but also you'll have the covenant to which he belongs. So, his bloodline on the one hand and his political affiliations on the other. And it's interesting to see a precursor of that here in the demon game, with the houses on the one hand, which is, your infernal heritage, and then on the other hand, the faction, which is your as it were, your political outlook, your way of living, as opposed to your demonic blood. So it almost gives the impression that they were already moving toward the split in the splats there. Excuse the pun.
The split in the splats?
Yeah. I could see that one coming.
Well, demons work a little different than every other one. Instead of, how you have humanity and Vampire the Masquerade, they use torment instead, and it has 2 different ratings. A permanent one and a temporary one. The temporary one fluctuating throughout the game depending on what you do. Basically, the temporary one will raise depending on the good deeds you do or the bad deeds you do. Mm-hmm. And every time you hit 10 on the temporary scale, that adds 1 more to your torment. And the higher your torment goes, the higher you're closer to becoming what they call as an NPC, or you're so tormented, you're so evil that you can no longer be a player anymore.
So you become more demonic the higher the torment is.
Higher, yeah, and when you have higher torment, you can no longer, as your torment goes up, I should say, you can no longer do certain things like go into holy ground, disguise yourself, and even animals start to fear you and run away from you at that point.
So it affects the way you appear as well. I mean, I remember reading something, an apocalyptic form. Has that got something to do with torment?
Yeah, their apocalyptic form, excuse me, that was a tongue twister for a second there. It can either be angelic or demonic-like, really monstrous demonic. And the more tormented you get, the more twisted and disgusting your apocalyptic form becomes. And the whole goal is you're not really supposed to show that form to humans, but, sometimes you can. And when you do that, you usually get something called faith. That's another thing in the game. You know how vampires use blood to feed off of and use? Yeah. Well, they use faith. And what they can do is to get faith, it's also on a scale that's temporary and permanent. And what they want to do is pretty much they want to take as much faith as they can to power up their lore, which is their magic. That determines if they can, take the fire and throw it, or create water and flood a whole area. Now, there's a couple ways of doing that. You can reaping faith by cruelty and tormenting humans indirectly by torturing them.
Right.
Which is fun in itself. And then there's also donating faith. Like you can walk around and play that devil role by making pacts with people, promising them things, and having them willingly sign their soul over to you.
Oh, I see.
And then you can also rip faith from people too. I mean, you can, in times of need, emergencies. You know how you pump your blood and you pump your stats in Vampire. You can ravage the faith and pump some things up too. But it can only be done in extreme emergencies because it really tortures and hurts the humans, and it could kill them by taking more from their soul as they move on. So
you can drain someone dry, as it were.
Oh yeah, just
by... and that gains you torment. So if you were to suck someone's faith completely out of them, you would receive faith, but would your torment go up as well?
Yes, it would, because that would be considered an evil act.
Yeah,
every evil act you do would give you a tick on that torment, and by the time you get so far up in the torment, you can't reverse. It's very hard to reverse it. Like some of the good acts, say like helping an old lady across the street was considered a good act. I know it's a bad example, but we'll just use that for now. Remember in the beginning that would be like, oh, that's a good deed, that's wonderful. Erases one off. Now you have to do 3 for the 1.
Right. So that's a little bit like the humanity scale with Vampire, where the further along the scale you progress, certain things now become relevant to you that weren't relevant before.
That's correct.
Okay, cool.
Well, that sounds good. Any closing comments on Demon, Mark?
Well, apart from using a minor demon as an NPC in a game, the thing that interested me the most about the line is the Earthbound. Now, what little I know of the Earthbound is that these are demons, immense, powerful Dukes of Hell type demons, who were never actually consigned to the Abyss in the first place, or who managed to slip out at some point over time.
They were
And
here
they're
first, yeah.
Sorry, carry on?
They were here first, is what I was saying.
Right.
Sorry.
Okay. And so they're kind of lying hidden and lost somewhere out in the wilds of the world, these immense things embedded in the fabric of reality with cults and religions and worship growing up around them. I thought that was just a fantastic concept. And that crops up all over the World of Darkness. And it goes way back even before Demon was a full-fledged game line. And then they took some of these sleeping entities and later wound them back into the Demon mythology. The clan book Bali is a great example of this for the Dark Ages game, where they had a group of people, an early tribe that uncovered one of these creatures and started to worship it. And the abuses that this created eventually led to the rise of the Bali clan. Another one is in the Transylvania Chronicles, where it's sometimes suggested that Kupala, the ancient land spirit that watches over the Tsimishe clan, might be an earthbound, long since forgotten its heritage. And I just thought that was a very, very cool idea, that the Demon game made excellent use of.
I really did enjoy the Demon game when we played it. We had lots of fun stories. I had a really good storyteller, which I'm really sad that he's gone. He actually was part of the Coast Guard, and when he graduated the Coast Guard Academy here, he picked his assignment in Alaska.
Oh, whoa.
I know. I was like, dude, Alaska? He's like, yeah, I want to try something new. I'm
Yeah,
like,
well, it's a good place to go for it.
Yeah, but we lost our storyteller. He ran some really good adventures, and I had a lot of fun. I was playing pretty much a Faustian, a devil.
Okay.
And I was throwing around fire and tormenting people and trying to make... I kept failing at the packs, though.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was really good at getting me out of the situation. But it was fun trying. I mean, it was a great game overall.
So what films or TV shows or books would you recommend a storyteller look at for inspiration in the Demon game? I mean, the one thing that springs to mind to me, to do with Fallen Angels, of course, is the classic The Prophecy movies with Christopher Walken. Are those the kinds of things that would feature in a Demon game, or is it really much more infernal than that?
I think it's a little more infernal than that, though.
Yeah.
I can't think of a movie offhand that would probably fit this particular book. Other than what you said.
Ninth Gate was one that stuck out for me.
Ninth Gate? Oh, with Johnny Depp?
That's right, yeah.
I think that one might work. For some reason, The Omen keeps coming to mind, but I don't think that really will fit too well. Could.
Well, what I like about The Omen is the demons, the dark forces in The Omen are hidden.
Yeah.
They're there. They're there, present in every scene, but you never see them, which I thought is a fantastic piece of storytelling. So that might work for a demon game where the demons are antagonists and the player characters are just mortals, and you have these demons running around pulling all the strings and having cults built up around them, but that you never see them on screen. They're never on camera, as it were.
Of course, we're talking about the original, not the remake.
I haven't seen it, and I can't say I'm sad.
I would just stay away from it. Okay, well, that will wrap up Demon. If you have any questions, you just give us a holler in the forums or email Mark. Mark, what's that email once again? darkerdaysradio@gmail.com. Any thoughts or suggestions or actual play experiences you've had with Demon, go ahead and send them our way. And we definitely have room on the forums to start up some games, which some people have been chatting about. So you can go to darkerdays.tk and click on that little link in the right-hand corner, like Mark said, and join us for the fun in the forums.
Mm-hmm.
And now, on to the new World of Darkness, or the current World of Darkness, which Mark has a special segment for everybody. Mark, what are we doing this week?
This week we're going to look at a review. We were going to take a couple of reviews, but we're just going to focus on the one just now and give it a real bit of close-up attention. We're going to take a look at the book Second Sight.
Okay.
Now, it's for the core New World of Darkness line, so it doesn't necessarily belong to vampire or werewolf or mage. And it's a book for dealing with ordinary people exposed to the unknown. Psychics, mystics, mediums, seers, that kind of thing. It details paranormal powers, low magic. Now, players from the old World of Darkness will recognize this as the kind of thing that used to be called hedge magic or static magic, and it was covered across a slew of books, most notably in the two editions of Sorcerer. New World of Darkness makes the smart move of keeping it all in one place, which is greatly appreciated. Now, it starts off, as most World of Darkness books do, with 8 pages of opening fiction. Oh my God, I'm sure it's wonderfully written, but this kind of thing just sends me to sleep immediately. I know that's just a personal opinion, and I know there's a lot of people who enjoy the fiction, but it really just doesn't do it for me.
Well,
so I've got to hold my hand up and say that's probably a failing on my part, but there you go.
Well, Mark, I have to say that Dark Ages did open up with a whole bunch of pages of a story as well, and that was entertaining, so...
Yeah, it was. I didn't really read it.
It's a great story. You should read it.
I'm just like, flip. Where's the rules? Give me the characters.
Go ahead.
Anyway, back to Second Sight. The introductory section is good. It details where these low-key supernatural powers fit into the World of Darkness. The writing is kind of overdone. It's a little bit overwrought, which to me always makes it seem like the author is trying too hard to be creepy. But you know, that's one of the characteristics of World of Darkness source books, I suppose. Some are better, some are worse.
That's something, Mark, I've noticed about the new World of Darkness stuff, is they seem like the products are quality products, and it seems like they're going a little bit overboard on some of the stuff just to try to get their words, express to what they're trying to say, but I think some of the things they're going a little too far on.
Well, I had this feeling with the opening chapter of Inferno, which we reviewed a couple of shows back, and this isn't as overdone as that, and it's certainly not as overdone as, say, Destiny's Price from the old World of Darkness, which we also looked at a couple of shows ago. That was just silly in places, but fair enough. It's an impression that it gave me. That said, the details here are good. The material itself, never mind the message, never mind the medium, the material of the message is good. It makes it clear that we're dealing with low-key stuff. There are no leagues of extraordinary psychokinetics out there. We're talking about individuals with singular powers. And it gives us plenty of examples from film and TV and books as to where you could look to see representations of this kind of power. Things like Medium, things like the Supernatural show, things like Stephen King's books, Firestarter and Carrie. That's the kind of thing we're talking about here. Just a random individual who's had something come into their life, a single power or one or two powers that has changed them completely. And it refers to these as lesser templates. Now, a main template, of course, would be something like vampire or mage or werewolf. These are lesser templates. It gives us rules for stacking lesser templates, one on top of the other, and also tells you what happens when a character with a lesser template gets a major template. Basically, he loses the lesser one. Now, to my mind, there's no real need for this. It could be kind of interesting to have a vampire who still possesses some of his psychokinetic abilities, but the designers, they probably want to avoid crazy power-mongering. I'd prefer to see this left in the hand of the storyteller rather than banned outright. But that said, there are some cool suggestions for recovering experience points spent on psychic powers, so it's not a total loss in that regard. Next, we get into greater detail on working this material into your game. Now, this section is excellent. It's very well thought out, a solid look at different levels of awareness on the part of the public, with all the ramifications and the consequences well developed. It gives you options to choose from. Do regular people, when they see this, do they believe it? Do they dismiss it out of hand? What would it be like if a certain percentage of the so-called psychics and mediums and conjurers out there were really doing the real thing? How would that affect people's beliefs? And it details what effect this would have on your chronicle. Simple advice being stuff like, look, if you want to maintain the integrity of a World of Darkness chronicle, don't overdo it. Don't rule that every other occult bookshop owner has 3 dots in divination or that kind of thing.
They don't?
I guess that depends on your game, really, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, I guess, okay.
It's in this section that the sidebars start to show up. These contain little nuggets for the storyteller with optional rules approaches, story hooks. And we've seen these before in New World of Darkness books, and here, as elsewhere, they're top-notch. And some of the best stuff in the book is in the sidebars, in my opinion. So I really like the way they're plonking these little nuggets of information throughout the text. It really helps spice it up. And in many cases, the sidebars are as memorable, if not more memorable, than the material itself. Next, the book moves on to the actual powers itself, the meat of the feast. These are bought as psychic merits, so they're not laid out like your spheres or your disciplines or what have you. It's not ranked by dots from 1 to 5, although they are ranked as merits, but there's not like a psychokinesis path or a divination path. They're just a collection of individual merits that you buy up as you see fit. There's a glossary. Unfortunately, 90% of the glossary is made up of the blindingly obvious, but with a few decent entries that World of Darkness players might not know about, so morphic resonance and orgone energy. The writer has clearly done their homework there. But a lot of the stuff in the glossary to most World of Darkness players will be pretty obvious. There's a good toolkit section on where these powers might come from. Are they due to a bloodline? Are they due to radioactive experiment, that kind of thing? It name checks the Tomorrow People, which was a 1970s BBC kids show, which I loved. So this section automatically gets a big thumbs up from me.
Never heard of it.
No, it's probably pretty awful actually in retrospect, but I loved it when I was about 4. So. There's a surprisingly well-researched section on the history of psychic powers in the real world. There's some great nuggets of information here, connecting the work on orgone energy with the Manhattan Project, for example, and some stuff on Edgar Cayce that, startlingly enough, manages to avoid mentioning Atlantis. And then we're into the merits themselves, and there's 34 pages of them. They're divided into ESP, mediumism, which I think is a really awful word, psychokinesis, and telepathy. Now, my feeling is these are rather arbitrary distinctions, but it helps to keep it a little bit manageable by breaking them up into 4 little groups. The powers themselves are well described. They're clear. The rules, the crunch material is solid. It's unambiguous. Now, for the most part, they're what you'd expect to find. There's nothing groundbreaking there. They fill the required niche. You need a book that details low-grade magic, low-grade psychic powers. This is what you expect to find, and this is what you do find. So, it hits the target there. There is some interesting stuff, some unusual, unexpected material. The stuff on automatic writing was very cool. The stuff on plant empathy is very interesting. Now, there is some redundancy, some overlap in the powers, I have to say that. The psychokinesis section is most guilty of this. For example, psychic healing and psychic vampirism are just 2 sides of the same coin. You either heal or you do damage. And to my mind, that could have been one power and left room for something else. And making healing and vampirism part of psychokinesis seemed to me to be a pretty odd choice. Cryokinesis, thermokinesis, and pyrokinesis are similarly closely linked variations on the same theme, and I thought they could have been placed on a sliding scale with each other as opposed to breaking them up into different powers. Now you have some of this overlap in telepathy as well, but at least there is a sensible progression of power types. The section rounds itself out with some very cool ancillary merits that add flavor to the system, stuff like anti-psi, lucid dreaming, that kind of thing. That's a nice little extra touch, and I thought that really put a nice spark in the tail of the psychic merit section. Now, Chapter 3 details systems of magic and magical belief, whereas the previous section was more about psychic powers. Here we get into magic. For storytellers who want to include practitioners of low magic into the game as opposed to psychic powers, this is the section that you want. The book calls them thaumaturges, which is just a general catch-all term to refer to practitioners of magic in the World of Darkness. Now, thaumaturges derive their power through real-world belief systems. If you are a player of Mage, you'll know the general idea in there that real-world magical belief systems are more or less mistaken, and there's the real truth of a hidden magical lore behind that. Now, this approach here in Second Sight is similar to what is covered in the Mage the Awakening book, Magical Traditions. And it'll also be very familiar to players of Mage the Ascension, back from Classic World of Darkness. There's a brief look at where thaumaturges fit into the World of Darkness, and then we move straight onto the crunch. Now, this overview is a little bit thin when compared to the detail that's given to fitting psychic powers into the game, but that said, magical traditions are a little bit more well-known, so the writer can be forgiven for skimping on it a little bit here. The rules cover thaumaturge rituals, thaumaturgic magic, and give you a very solid system for making thaumaturge characters. And then it gives you details on the 6 magical belief systems that feature in the book, notably Apostle of the Dark One, Ceremonial Magician, Hedge Witch, Shaman, Taoist Alchemist, and Voodoo. Just briefly, they're pretty much what they sound like. Voodoo is a practitioner of voodoo magic. Taoist Alchemist deals with the slightly more out there versions of Taoist belief. The Shaman is, a shaman. Hedge Witch harkens back to the more the classical types of witches, a little bit of tint of druidry here, and all more modern incarnations. And the Ceremonial Magician is your classic bell, book, and candle ritual wizard. I suppose a little bit like Aleister Crowley in approach.
Mr. Crowley. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, a great song.
Yeah.
An Apostle of the Dark One. They're people who ally themselves with the forces of darkness and the stereotypical Satanist type. Now, the writers, of course, they take liberties with the real-world belief systems for purposes of gameplay, and so they should. There's no need to slavishly be adhering to the actual truths of shamanism and ceremonial magic if you can tweak it a little bit to make the game more interesting. The results are mixed. There's mixed success with this. The stuff on Taoism is good, and as is the stuff on ceremonial magic and shamanism. The stuff on hedge witchery less so, and the Apostle of the Dark One is just downright silly, I'm afraid to say, but it's still all perfectly usable in the game. So if you have a storyteller who's able to put a cool spin on this and not have your Apostle of the Dark One come across as a sort of hand-wringing, cackling servant of evil, then more power to you. There's 20 pages of merits for thaumaturges, which cover the powers at hand here. And as before, you get what you'd expect. Nothing out of the ordinary. Good, solid, workable material. It doesn't generally suffer from the overlap problem that some of the psychic powers do. Evocation and invocation probably don't need to be separate powers, but that's about it. There are a couple of editing issues, but nothing that overly diminishes its use. And there's a really nice little sidebar on having a familiar for your thaumaturge. Chapter 4 is on reality-bending horrors. Now, I'll be honest, I had no idea at all what this is even doing in the book. It's totally out of keeping with the themes of subtle psychic sorcery, low magic, and urban creepiness. Basically, we're dealing with Cthulhu here.
Good game.
Alien beings from beyond reality that will melt your brain and give you tentacles all over your face. Good stuff, yeah. The book makes it clear the stories about these beings should focus on their human cultists, but the scale of these alien creatures concerned is a real breach of theme for the book. Now, that said, the material covered here is totally cool. It's fantastic. On theme or on theme, off topic or on topic, it's just great. Great stuff and loads of fun to use and play. I loved it. I wasn't sure what it was doing in the second sight book. As before, the writing does get a bit carried away. There's some real dense blocks of text going on and on about how awful it is to be an insane cultist of Nyarlathotep. But the subject matter is useful all the same, and it really gives you the details that you need. There's some very strong sidebars with good examples to flesh out the text. Some good treatment on using the supposedly unquantifiable elder gods in play, and some very interesting rituals for the cultists to use. When it comes down to the actual powers that these cultists have, unlike psychic powers and thaumaturgy, this section is hugely imaginative, with some really weird stuff packed into the pages. You give yourself tentacles. You can regenerate your wounds by growing fungal blooms in their place. Give someone a run of bad luck, like something out of the first Omen movie. All that kind of thing. Very, very cool. The book ends with an appendix giving a sample story. There's nothing outrageous here, but it's handy to get the psychic ball rolling, so to speak. To be honest, though, I think the appendix should have been dropped and replaced with an index. Yes, another World of Darkness book with no index. And given the proliferation of merits and powers and other magical funkiness in the book, it's a real oversight. So, bad White Wolf, bad. No cookies for you.
No soup for you, too.
Very wrong. Very, very wrong. But, no matter how much people bleat and yammer about this, it just seems to be a fact of life. So, there you go.
That's White Wolf for you.
Yeah, they hate indexes. They hate them. I don't know. Anyway, okay. In overview, using merits to define powers, psychic powers, thaumaturgy, crazy cultist stuff. It's an inspired move. I thought this was the strongest element that stood out in the book. That you have merits for these things as opposed to power paths. It keeps it simple. It keeps it manageable. And because they're a little bit expensive, it prevents runaway power abuse. The material on psychic powers and thaumaturgy is solid, workmanlike, and it gives you what you need without any frills. The section on the Cthulhu cultists, although a bit misplaced, is fantastic fun. Probably the strongest section of the book. So if you want to play a World of Darkness game without the high-powered supernatural beings like mages and vampires, but still with magic, this book is what you need. It's a one-stop shop of the supernatural, and this is its biggest strength. You can get huge amounts of use out of this book, and none of it is complicated. Mage, The Awakening, which covers much of the same territory by comparison, is complicated and arcane. Second Sight is simple, it's easily understood, and it's easily used. So
go ahead, Mark. I'm sorry.
Yeah, just for me, on a good day, 8 out of 10. On a bad day, when I'm feeling annoyed about the index, 7. So, yeah, there you go.
The index drops it down by the lack thereof. The index drops it down by 1. I say. Well, it looks like it's a good book to pick up if you, like you said, to use. But that Cthulhu section, a little bit weird why that's there. But I guess it's still chock full of chunky bits and goodness for fun.
That's going to be that'll be of use to players in any World of Darkness game where the storyteller wants to introduce that side of things. So I guess it's not enough to fill an entire book on its own. Although when we get to doing Summoners next week, you'll see how there's a really fantastic take on that kind of thing in Summoners as well, which is even more crazy and imaginative than what they do in Second Sight. Now, as I said earlier, we were going to do Summoners this week, but we're gonna put it on the back burner for another show. I know you can email me and slap me around for it because I promised to have it this show, but for reasons of length, we're going to do it next show.
Mark, guess what?
What's up?
I have a special treat for you today.
It's not more Scary Children, is it?
No, it's actually user submitted. It's a bumper. You ready?
Oh, go on then. Hit me.
Listening to the Darker Days podcast. More fun than being smacked in the head with a wooden board.
That's fantastic. I
believe that Boggin Knight has sent that in via email, and we had to just stick it in the show because it was so great.
That's fantastic. Brilliant.
And you
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Definitely, thank you very much. We'll be using that quite often. I really like that. Any listener out there who wants to submit their own bumpers, please record it and send it right to the email, and Mark will forward it right to me so we can put it right in the show.
Yes, indeed, yes. Well, Bog and I has set the standard very high there, so let's see what the rest of you guys can come up with.
Yeah, he has set the bar. The bar is very high, and people better set... No, I'm just kidding. Mark, your Christmas does not stop there.
Christmas in August? How lucky can one man be?
I don't know. Look what else we got for you. And now it's time for Storyteller Advice with Mark and Vince.
I feel like I'm in some kind of cheesy 70s porn movie. It's wonderful.
Hey, just to throw the Sanford and Son music together, and why not? But that leads us into our new segment that we will maybe do every show or every other show, depending on how many questions we get. It'll be an advice section for new storytellers and old storytellers alike. Basically, Mark, when you're writing up it's just a campaign, wrong game, sorry. You're writing up a story for your game. You're jotting down ideas. Now, do you actually physically write them down, or are you like on the fly guy?
It varies. I used to be very meticulous, and I would write down an introductory passage, and I would stat out NPCs, and I would write them, almost as you would see in a published product. But as I've gotten older and slower, I don't have the time or inclination to do that anymore, and now I tend to. If my prep time goes over 20 minutes, I get bored and annoyed, and I want to go do something else instead. So I've learnt by various little methods to get the game prepped as rapidly as possible and go ahead with as few extensive notes as possible.
Getting cranky.
And given the way that players are, I find that helps to keep me flexible when they go running off in the other direction, leaving my plot in tatters behind them.
I guess you're getting cranky in your old age.
I am, and I'm not ashamed to admit it.
Well, this is an idea that I use, and I know a couple people have used it in the past, but we're going to name it something different. It's called the story tome idea. Basically, it's going to be your notebook. It's going to be your little Bible of the game. And there's going to be a couple points that we're going to go over, Mark and myself, and you could write them down or you could change them up, and we're going to just go over them. Now, the first idea would be when you got your group, you're going to decide what game you're going to run. And the next question you're going to ask yourself, when you're picking your game, do you know enough about the rules of that game to run that particular game? That's always a big point to the game. You don't know the rules, there's no point in running the game. I mean, it's just going to annoy your players, and it's going to annoy you as a GM just to keep looking things up all the time.
I think what's important is you have to be comfortable with them. You don't need to memorize the rule book. No GM, no sane GM can do that anyway. You need to be confident enough to go with what you've got and be prepared to make whatever on the fly adjudications as and when they come up. And equally important, if you're not, if you don't feel like you know the rules 100%, but you've got a ballpark understanding and you're happy enough to run the game, make sure your players are understanding that too. You say to them, "Well, guys, I'm new to this set of rules. Let's just go with it, and if I mess it up, we'll deal with it after the game, or call me on it during the game. But just bear with me." And you'll find that most players are amenable to that kind of thing, and they prefer you to be open as well about where you're at.
Right. Usually in your group, they're your friends. They know you pretty well, and if you say to them, "Listen, this is a learning experience for all of us," I'm sure they'll understand.
Yeah, that degree of communication between you and your players, I think, is the number one thing for a storyteller to get on board with. At the end of the day, you're all sharing in the play experience, and the more upfront and open you are about all the various issues of the game, the more enjoyable the play experience will be. Now that leads us on to the second point, which is you ask your players, out of the games that you're interested in, which ones would they like to play? So, you've maybe got a short list that consists of a slasher game or a demon game or a mage game, and you really want to run those. Talk to the players and say, "Look, guys, out of these three, which ones are you interested in?" Because if there's no buy-in on their part, the game will run off half-hearted. You'll have people dropping out after a couple of sessions where they think, "Yeah, I really didn't want to play demon, and I don't know how I can tell Bob, so I'm just not going to turn up."
Then you get those people that just show up. Yeah, sorry, Bob. You get those people that just show up and they just kind of sit there like, "Yeah, whatever, blah." You don't want that. Now, once your players have decided and they're all gung ho about, say, demon or whatever. Why am I using that like that? Because we featured that this week. But
yeah, it's the game du jour.
That's right. You decide next what supplements you're going to use. Like, you want to use Mark's second sight? Why not? Mark reviewed that for you this week. You can go ahead, grab that book, and be like, "Hey, I know a lot about this. Mark gave me a lot of chunks of goodness about this in that podcast that I'm going to tell all my friends about and tell them to go listen and download right now." Cheap plug, right?
That's the worst subliminal messaging I've ever heard. That really is.
Well, I figured I'd be upfront and straight with it. But anyway, once you decide your supplements, that's when you start jotting down some notes. Now, what are we going to do after we get our supplements down, Mark?
Right. Once you've decided what your brief, your library for the game is, you then want to decide, look, do I want to use everything in here? Which parts of this am I going to leave out? You don't need to feel that just because you've decided to use the slasher book or the second sight book, that, for example, we'll go with second sight as a good example. don't feel that you need to allow players access to every single merit. If you don't want a pyrokineticist in your game running around setting fires to things, say to the players, okay, we're going to use second sight, but pyrokinesis is out. This background we're not using. That special ability I don't want to have. And a storyteller, the buck stops with you in that regard. Everybody at the gaming table has to have fun, but that includes you. That includes the storyteller. You've got to have fun too. And in the final analysis, if you're not happy running the game, then there's no game. No. So yeah, decide with your players or on your own which bits are not going to be part of your game's canonical setting, and leave them out. Don't use them.
Right,
and that can be for a number of reasons. You think it's overpowering, you think the rule's too complicated, you think it's stupid. As long as you can talk your reasoning through with your players and they can understand you and respect that, then you're good to go.
Also, you are the storyteller, and if you say no, it's no. I mean, you have the final word over everything overall, and your players should understand that you're saying, I'm sorry, no.
Yeah, it is a cooperative experience, but as a storyteller, you need to get used to calling giving the final call, and the players need to accept that you're going to call the final call if it comes down to that. It doesn't have to be an antagonistic thing, but someone's got to do it, and if you're the one doing it, then your word goes.
Right, and then we're going to move on to now. You're going to start jotting down ideas for the game. Say it's a hunter game. You're going to ask yourself a few questions and then write some answers out. How are the players connected? Do they know each other? Do they not know each other? Do they have to find out who? Do you have to do a backstory on individual ones, or you want to skip the backstory? Then you got to decide: is this going to be ongoing, or is this going to be a one shot, or is this going to be like 5 sessions, 6 sessions, or just let it go on? Where will the story take place? You also got to find an area that you're familiar with. I wouldn't just say, I live in Pennsylvania, so I'm going to pick Idaho as my as where my story is going to take place. I don't know much about the state of Idaho. I mean, other than where it is, I don't know the towns there, so I'm going to have to do some research. Pick something that you're more familiar with. I've heard people picking their own hometowns just because everybody knows where everything is. It's easy to say it. My character runs down the 5th Street and he searches for blah, blah, blah. Also decide what year. That's very important also, because could it be in the present year? Could it be 20 years from now? Could it be 1980 and people running around with headbands on and going, woo! All those fun things. Those are very important factors in designing your story.
And a good way to do this, actually, is to have a session where you have your own ideas, but a good way to address it is a session where you sit down with the players. Maybe you want to create the characters during that session. Maybe you just want to address these matters as a group. I found in the last few World of Darkness games that I've run, we sit down and I just say to them, okay, look, I want to have a group of characters who are all connected. How do you guys know each other? And throw the ball in their direction. And, if you've got a decent set of players, they'll pick it up and run with it. So in the last game I had, we had 2 guys were going to be brothers of an old, decrepit, decadent, noble family in the wilds of rural England that has lost its way. Another guy said, I'm going to be their immortal butler. And the other 2 said, well, we're going to be members of a shadowy government ministry that have been investigating the family. Bang, straight away, and that was with no involvement from me. So get the players' input in that regard and see what they have to say about it. And see whether they want to play a one-shot or whether they want to play an arc of 3 sessions or whether they just want to play and play and play and play until the cows come home.
Chances are. I'm sorry.
No, it's cool. Like Vince says, the location is really important because, it helps for the storyteller to be familiar with the setting. And if you are going to set it somewhere a little bit away from home, a few tips there is you could pick up a travel guide, the Lonely Planet Guide to Paris, for example, if you're going to set the game in Paris. And some of these physical books are really rich in color and detail and maps and information on places to go and things to do. And of course, you've got the internet, which is just a wealth of information on any location you can pretty much think of.
Google Earth, that's a good one.
Yeah, I was using Google Earth recently in a tour game that I ran, and was able to zoom in right down to street level on the location of the game and just bring this up for the players. That's an invaluable aid.
You know what I find funny about that is that the card that goes around snapping pictures, so one of the pictures had a guy waving forever in the same spot. Every time I looked at it, the guy's still there waving. I'm like, cool, there's that guy. But anyway, after you do all that, now you're on your own. You're going to start jotting down some plot ideas. New page. You're going to write down simple sentences as you're going on your day. I mean, say it's Monday and you're not playing till Friday, or you're not playing till next Monday. You got a week to prepare. Just write down some ideas. Going with the hunter idea, my hunters will be going after a killer vampire in the area, or the hunters will investigate a series of killings in the warehouse district. They're going to work for the police. Maybe their families were attacked and the zombie apocalypse is upon them. There's so many different things you can do. Just write down your idea in one sentence, close the book, walk away. Yep. Think about it. And then go, oh, I have an idea. Run back to the book, write it down. Carry the book with you if you want. Put it on your head. I don't know. Put it in your armpit. Wherever you got to do.
Yeah, now, although I don't do massive writing for the actual adventure itself, this is something that I do a fair amount, is, like you say, jot an idea down here and there. And you'll find that, especially if you have a long time before the game is starting, you'll amass a fair amount of notes, and you'll start to see connections filter out of their own accord almost. Your subconscious will work on it, and you'll begin to be able to draw lines of plot between one character's name you put down here, a location there, a story idea there. So yeah, jotting the ideas down as they come to you is a great way to get the story seeds going.
And after you do that, I was going to use this as number 8, but I'm going to move it up to number 7. Start jotting down some ideas for scenes that you want along with those ideas. Like the warehouse district, maybe you want something to happen. You want a werewolf to jump out and attack certain players, or maybe it's raining out and it's hard for them to find something, and there's a bum there and he turns out to be a vampire. Things like that. Jot down scenes. Just because you jot them down doesn't mean you have to use them. As we all know, no. Players go all over the place in your game. You can always fit it in somewhere along the line.
No plot survives contact with the players.
No. And then after that, you're going to start fleshing out your non-player characters, your NPCs, the minor ones. Just some basic little names and things like that might have a reoccurring, like the bartender at the bar. Maybe the players will use him, you never know, more than once. And then you're going to write down the BBGs, I like to call it, or the big bad guy. The main focus point of the whole story. You're going to write down a few famous characters from movies to help give you a personality. Like you think maybe Captain Jack Sparrow for one of them. It's kind of funny, but maybe when you see that, you'll jump right into character mode and be like, and like all that.
It gives you something to hang the character on yourself. Yeah. Even if you can't do a Captain Jack Sparrow impersonation, for example, there might be something in the portrayal of the character that allows you to return to. So 2 weeks down the line or a month down the line, you haven't forgotten what the NPC was like.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, a handy way to get your ideas in some kind of coherence is to make just little lists. And you can what I do is I make little lists of 3. So I'll take, for example, 3 locations. If the story takes place within the same city, write down 3 places that are going to crop up in the story. Give them a lot of variance. 3 conflicts that might occur in the story. 3 NPCs that are going to crop up. 3 bits of background noise. 3 plot revelations. Those kind of things. Add in, 3 names for men or 3 names for women that you might need to reference. 3 little puzzles, 3 strokes of fortune. Basically, little elements that are going to occur in your adventures. And like Vince says, if you don't use them, then don't worry about it. But you can come back to it later. You'll see these things referred to as troikas. And you make up little groups of troikas on conflicts, locations, revelations, plot twists, recurring threads, future story seeds. And if you structure your lists in those ways, you'll find that the ideas begin to, like I said before, they come together quite readily, and you'll have something you can go back to for the adventure when you're actually starting to flesh it out and pluck the elements that you need out of these lists, or refer to them during play. If you suddenly realize you need a name, go back to your list of 3 names. Right, there's one I haven't used. Put that in right away.
Also, a big thing I've noticed is decide that if your characters are going to be in the city of Los Angeles, are you going to let them leave the city of Los Angeles? That's also a big factor in your story as well.
Yeah, and you can address that with the players up front. Monty Cook ran a very famous D&D campaign in a city he devised called Tolus, which was released as a 700-page hardback. It's a fantastic book, but that's for another game system. But anyway, it's a city, a single city, and he said to his players right at the beginning, the campaign is going to take place in the city. Please don't leave. And they went off to a couple of places around it, but for the most part, from levels 1 to 20 something, they were based within this one city and the dungeons beneath it. So don't be afraid to lay your cards on the table and say to the players, I want to run a game set in Los Angeles, or this game is going to be set in urban Manchester, or it's going to be in Paris, or I will set it on the Isle of Wight, and get the players to buy into that before character creation starts. Get them to buy into it as players. So when it comes to playing their characters, they'll be in the mindset to stay in the location that you've all agreed on.
Well, if you have any questions, you can always email us, and we'll be happy to answer your storytelling advice. I think that's going to wrap up storytelling. And Mark, did you have one more thing you wanted to go over as for advice?
Only to turn to the listeners and say, look, what specific elements are you interested in hearing for this? We've talked about the basics of preparing a game, focusing more on storytellers who are a little bit newer to the scene, but with a few tips and tricks that might be useful to the old hands. But if there are areas of specific interest, send them our way. Now, to draw a loop back to the beginning of the show, the email from Dominic, where he was interested in figuring out how to tie different and disparate supernatural beings together into a cohesive party. That's one thing that we could look at. Maybe you want to hear more about how to run cinematic and exciting combats. Maybe you're interested in how do I run a political intrigue game. Send us your suggestions and your questions, and we'll see what we can build to meet your desires.
And as far as Dominic's question is concerned, we'll put it up in the forums and let our listeners give us what their opinion of the answer would be, and then we'll give our answer on the next show.
Yes, indeed.
So it looks like that's going to wrap things up tonight, Mark.
Yes, looks like we're done with another one.
That's another one in the bag. Whoosh. This is Vince from Mark saying good night, everybody.
Good night, folks.